Demand Analysis Part 2. Types of demand. First, direct demand. Second, indirect demand. Third, complementary/joint demand. Fourth, composite demand. Fifth, competitive demand. First, direct demand. It is the demand by the consumer for goods which satisfy their wants directly. They serve direct consumption needs of the consumers. Thus, it is the demand for consumer goods. For example, demand for clothes, sugar, etc. Second, indirect demand. Indirect demand is also known as derived demand. It refers to demand for goods which are needed for further production. It is the demand for producers' goods. Hence, all factors of production have indirect or derived demand. For example, demand for workers in a sugar factory is derived or indirect demand. Third, complementary/joint demand. When two or more goods are demanded jointly to satisfy a single want, it is known as joint or complementary demand. For example, car and fuel, etc. Fourth, composite demand. The demand for a commodity which can be put to several uses is known as composite demand. For example, electricity is demanded for several uses such as light, fan, washing machine, etc. Fifth, competitive demand. It is demand for those goods which are substitute for each other. For example, tea or coffee, sugar or jaggery, etc. Determinants of demand. The demand for goods is determined by the following factors. First, price. Price determines the demand for a commodity to a large extent. Consumers prefer to purchase a product in large quantities when price of a product is less, and they purchase a product in small quantities when price of a product is high. Second, income. Income of a consumer decides purchasing power, which in turn influences the demand for the product. Rise in income will lead to a rise in demand for the commodity, and a fall in income will lead to a fall in demand for the commodity. Third, prices of substitute goods. If a substitute good is available at a lower price, then people will demand cheaper substitute good than costly good. For example, if the price of sugar rises, then demand for jaggery will rise. Fourth, price of complementary goods. Change in the price of one commodity would also affect the demand for other commodity. For example, car and fuel. If the price of fuel rises, then demand for cars will fall. Fifth, nature of product. If a commodity is a necessity and its use is unavoidable, then its demand will continue to be the same, irrespective of the corresponding price. For example, medicine to control blood pressure. Sixth, size of population. Larger the size of population, greater will be the demand for a commodity, and smaller the size of population, smaller will be demand for a commodity. Seventh, expectations about future prices. If the consumer expects the price to fall in future, he will buy less in the present at the prevailing price. Similarly, if he expects the price to rise in future, he will buy more in the present at the prevailing price. 8. Advertisement. Advertisement, sales, promotion scheme, and effective salesmanship tend to change the preferences of the consumers and lead to demand for many products. For example, cosmetics, toothbrush, etc. 9. Taste, habits, and fashions. Taste and habits of a consumer influence the demand for a commodity. If a consumer likes to eat chocolates or consume tea, he will demand more of them. Similarly, when a new fashion hits the market, the consumer demands that particular type of commodity. If a commodity goes out of fashion, then suddenly the demand for that product tends to fall. 10th, level of taxation. High rates of taxes on goods or services would increase the price of the goods or services. This in turn would result in a decrease in demand for goods or services and vice versa. 11th, other factors. First, climatic conditions. Second, changes in technology. Third, government policy. Fourth, customs and traditions, etc. Law of demand. Introduction. The law of demand was introduced by Professor Alfred Marshall in his book Principles of Economics, which was published in 1890. The law explains the functional relationship between price and quantity demanded. Statement of the law. According to Professor Alfred Marshall, other things being equal, higher the price of a commodity, smaller is the quantity demanded, and lower the price of a commodity, larger is the quantity demanded. In other words, other factors remaining constant, if the price of a commodity rises, demand for it falls, and when price of a commodity falls, demand for the commodity rises. Thus, there is an inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. Symbolically, the functional relationship between demand and price is expressed as dx is equal to f px, where d is demand for a commodity, x is the commodity, f is the function, and px is price of a commodity. Assumptions. Law of demand is based on the following assumptions. First, constant level of income. If the law of demand is to find true operate, then consumers' income should remain constant. If there is a rise in income, people may demand more at a given price. Second, no change in the size of population. It is assumed that the size of population remains unchanged. Any change in the size and composition of population of a country affects the total demand for the product. Third, prices of substitute goods remain constant. It is assumed that the prices of substitutes remain unchanged. Any change in the price of the substitute will affect the demand for commodity.